Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, I'm Aboagye and I create content on how to study abroad, scholarship tips and the in-betweens. If you are new here, kindly hit the subscribe button and also hit the bell button to get notified when there are new videos. How is your application going? I know it's a crazy season because a lot of applications are open. Let me know in the comment section how your applications are going and what problem you've been facing. In today's video, I'm going to focus on how to prepare for an interview. Let's say you sent a cold email to a professor, you've sent an email and a supervisor, prospective supervisor would like to meet you. What are some of the things you need to do and how can you prepare for this interview to be successful? I have personally had the opportunity to sit in some of these interviews, so I'm preview to some of the questions that have been asked and how to prepare for it. And in this academics, in this period or season, I've helped a number of prospective graduate students to prepare for this, and I've only had good news. I'm going to share with you the tips I shared with them and how they prepare. So stick with me and remember, I'm always rooting for you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is the best time to. Before you even start your preparation, one thing I always advise prospective students is to visit the website of the supervisor. Try and read some of his or her work to be familiar with what he or she does. Take some words that you think are very necessary or that summarizes his or her research work and use some of these words during your preparation. They are called buzzwords. Example, like what kind of research does she do? What method does she use? What software does she use? And if you have all these, because it's very important you mention it, please and please again, before you start your preparation, try and read about the supervisor. Make a quick Google search of his or her name. Go to her website, read a bit about his or her students and the skills these students have, because this will give you an idea of the kind of people he or she is looking for, and if you have those skills, you align yourself to that. So I'm going to use a document I prepared with John Bob, who is a prospective graduate student. We'll go over his response and I'm going to explain why he uses words and how you can frame your answers. Please and please again, don't copy word for word, but I'm also going to give you a general idea of how to prepare for this. So let's dive right into it. So one of the common questions that prospective students are asked is, tell me about yourself. This is to serve as an icebreaker. This is also to help both of you to get to know each other. When it comes to this question, what I advise people to do is, this is your chance to actually impress your supervisor, to impress the supervisor. So this is it's a tricky question because it's always difficult to, should I say, hoot your horns, but this is actually a great avenue to do that. When it comes to these questions, this is what you should focus on. Talk about your education, talk about awards you've had. And one thing that most people forget to say is, I always advise people to include their extracurricular activities because this paints the whole picture about you. So let's look at an example of tell me about yourself and how John answered this question. So he started with, my name is John Bob, and I hold a bachelor's degree in telecommunication engineering from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana. He told you about his background. He has knowledge in telecommunication engineering. I fell in love with antennas and propagation during my third year of study. So for my undergraduate research, I teamed up with two classmates to work on the design of a planar modeled ultra-wide band antenna with single and dual band notch properties under the supervision of Dr. Sani Ellis Mubarak. I know you are wondering, why is this important or why is this necessary? This is necessary because he's actually interviewing with a supervisor whose research interest is in antenna and propagation. So from this response, he shows that he actually has background knowledge of the topic. And he also mentioned his supervisor's name. So if this supervisor is actually a well-known figure when it comes to antenna and with antennas, it's a plus for him. It's a plus for him because then the supervisor knows that, oh, this guy is solid because he's worked with this person. And a quick Google search of this professor will let you know that, oh, the work he does, and for the supervisor to link both of them. So this is why it's important to mention your supervisor's name. The HFSS software was used to design the antenna, so it's also showing some of the software he knows or some of the skills he knows. This thesis was adjudged as the best thesis in the Faculty of Electrical and Computer Engineering in KNUST. This award he's won. A refined version of this research was later published in the Helion Journal. So I have one publication to my credit. So this is also like he's telling you that, oh, he's a solid guy. These are some of the things he's done. He didn't end there. I also have about 3 years of working experience in the telecom industry as a microwave and DWDM transmission engineer and also a network engineer. I'm currently working with a master's student at Charles to University of Madrid to publish an article on circularly polarized wideband implantable antenna for ISM applications. For me, I really don't know much about this, but when you are talking to the supervisor, he or she will know these things because these are terms, these are words in your field. So he knows that, oh, this guy knows his stuff because he's using some of the technical terms. He has the design already on HFSS but didn't get the desired result. So my role is to redesign the antenna on CST and analyze it in order to get the desired results and also do part of the writing. So he's also showing the role he's playing in this publication. Outside academics, I love listening to music and playing soccer. With this summary, like once he finished, till you have a general idea of who John Bob is. So this is why it's very important. Like with this, I'm even in prayers. Let me know if you're in prayers, and like if they tell you who is John Bob, you even have a clear picture of who John Bob is. So this is the first question. Tell me about yourself, and this is a quick summary of who he is. In about 1 minute or 2 minutes, he's giving you, and you have a general idea. So now let's look at the second question. The second question we will focus on is what made you choose my lab? What made you choose my lab? So in this part, I will advise you to discuss your research interest and how your research interest is actually linked to the work that's being done in his or her lab. So he was interviewing with the woman, so I'll start using she. So let's look at the response he gave. My research interests are wideband antennas, reconfigurable antennas, and human body antennas. So, in finding a lab that was best fit for me, I came across your profile and found some of your papers which sparked my interest. He went straight to the point, his research interest. So, he knows what he was looking for. And from what he was looking for, he started his search. So, you see, you start with your research interest and you start your search. I read some of your lab's recent papers on wideband antennas, which I found really interesting and resourceful, especially your co-authored paper titled A Wideband Coplanar L-Strip Fed Rectangular Patch Antenna with Dr. Radhavam, which talked about the step-by-step approach in designing the antenna and so the concept in getting the wide impedance bandwidth property. He was very specific. Before, most of the responses John had prepared for were very generic and it was like anybody could answer. So we worked on refining it and giving specific example. So with this, it's like he's done his work. He's told you the paper that interested him. He even went ahead to mention who he worked with and talked a bit about the paper. I have a career goal of being a researcher in the field of antenna, and I believe with your interest in antenna theory, design, and analysis, especially in wideband, phase area, and recoverable antennas, and your years of experience in this field, the Antennas and Applied EM Lab, he mentioned the name of lab at University of Alabama, Huntsville, is a perfect place for me to acquire in-depth knowledge in this field and also use as a stepping stone to achieve my goal. He started with his research interest. He talked about the research interests of the professor and the lab, and he merged them together on the reason why he thought this lab was a perfect fit for him. And that's basically how you could also go about yours. Now let's look at, and one thing he also mentioned was, which was not in his response, but during our discussion was the fact that the professor had a lot of interest in working with women and minority groups. And he also mentioned the fact that since he was also a minority group, he felt that this professor would be a good mentor for him during his period as his graduate student. Our next question is, why do you want a master's degree? Because there are so many things you could do. So why do you want a master's degree? And for that, I would like you to talk about your love for research and your future goals. This should also be linked to your future goals and your love for research. Antenna propagation is a topic that I'm really passionate about. In years to come, I want to be an expert antenna researcher where I'll be able to contribute my quota in solving some major challenges such as electromagnetic interference in the health, giving an example of a problem caused by electromagnetic interference in the health sector. So what he did was like he wanted to solve this problem in the health sector, and he gave the exact problem, like examples of some of the problems that they face in this field. So that's where I give an example of a problem. So, and telecom industry in my country and globally. Therefore, with this goal, I look forward to earning my master's degree in electrical engineering with specialization in antennas and applied electromagnetic from UAH, where I can be able to acquire more knowledge in order to achieve the feat. So, when it comes to why do you want this master's degree, you need to talk about your future goals and how the particular research or the particular work you are going to do links to that. The next question is that what are your post-master's plans? What do you want to do after your master's? It's also linked to your future goals. So when it comes to this, what are your post-master's plans? So during my undergraduate thesis, my supervisor had to send the designed antenna to a friend in Iran to fabricate it, test and measure the results due to lack of resources and technical know-how. I have short-term and long-term plans. My short-term plan is to pursue a PhD right after my master's studies, and my long-term plan is to work as a researcher in the R&D department of a health or telecom industry where antennas are applied after I completed my PhD. This is very important because he's able to identify a problem that exists, which he feels that his research work would help him to solve it immediately he's done with school. So it's like in his field, because we do not have the technical know-how, most of the designs are actually sent out to the country. So with this knowledge, he becomes a technical person who is able to solve this problem. I hope you are following through, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section. So the next thing we are going to look at what are your strengths and weaknesses. I'm just going to read this, and if there's anything, I'm going to highlight it. So starting off with my strengths, these include my research experience, which is evident in my publications and undergraduate thesis. Having a publication is not common here for an undergraduate, but because I wanted to go to grad school, I decided to put in the work to achieve it. And my technical skills in using CST and HFSS for antenna design, which I believe will be an asset to your lab. If you have done your homework, you will know some of the softwares or some of the skills that is needed, so you're able to put it there. I also mentioned the fact that you should mention that it's not common to have a paper. If you don't have a paper, that's okay. But like he has it, so it's very important that he mentions it to be like he went ahead to do extra work because he knew this was going to help him. Not only that, I'm also proactive. Example on how I met Sarosh on Facebook and publishing paper with him. So Sarosh is the guy that he's working with for the paper. So he talked about like how he met him and how he started the work. So as I always tell you, always give specific examples to back whatever you say. I am also a self-motivated individual interested in taking on new challenges. Example of how I motivated myself to take a course on Python programming on Coursera. So he mentions the skills and he mentions how he is showing that. My weakness is the fact that I'm not good when it comes to antenna testing and measurement, but I put this down to the fact that I've never had hands-on experience of taking measurements or testing an antenna before. However, I'm somebody who genuinely wants to learn and improve, so I'll use my time at Antennas and Applied EM Lab at UH when given the opportunity to learn how to use a VNA and an chamber for antenna measurements and testing respectively, since the lab have all these resources for my research. He mentioned his weakness and he mentioned how the lab or how the research is also going to help him achieve that. I hope you are following. I hope you are understanding how we are preparing for these interviews. Interviews are very important and they can make or break you. You could have all the qualifications, but if you do not succeed in your interview, it becomes a problem when you lose. And I really enjoyed working with Bo because, like, once I gave him the suggestions, he was able to put all this together. The next question is, what makes you a right candidate? Remember, we are interviewing so many people from all over the world. So, why should you be chosen? So he went with my bachelor's degree in telecommunication engineering, research experience in antennas, and the UCST and HFS software for antenna design. I believe I'll be a good fit for your lab. I also come along with a foundation in antennas, microwave engineering, and wireless communication, knowledge and relevant work experience in the telecom industry, the desire to learn and zest for new challenges. You see, with this, he went straight to the point and didn't have to talk a lot. Why? Because he had already explained all this from the beginning. So by now, the supervisor knows that this guy is a solid guy. This guy knows what he's talking about. Like all these things, he doesn't have to explain it because he has explained it before. And this is how we build up for an inter. This is how we build up for an interview. Like we are planning, we are giving the points, we are giving tips here and there. So once we are ready, like we can summarize everything into one. So the next question is, can you talk about your research work? And this, I know there's so much to say when it comes to can you talk about your research work? And this is what I advise people to do. Break them into points. One, look at the general problem you plan on solving. Two, talk about what people have done to resolve this general problem. That's like the research gap. We talk about the research and what you are doing and the results you have and why it's important. So for him, after he talked about this, so he also prepared a little bit of a PowerPoint to talk about the work he's done, which I think it's a brilliant idea, and which for all of you who are preparing, I also suggest you do it. Like you just prepare PowerPoint of all the work you've done, and be like, one shot and be like, oh, I have a PowerPoint to present to you if you like. So now let's look at how he talked about his previous research work. So the general problem. Existing narrowbands such as WiMAX, Bluetooth, like all these things may cause serious electromagnetic interference that will lead to poor results. What people have done, that's the research gap. Most work on this obtain easy control of band notch width due to separated strips, stable radiation pattern and gain across the UW range, small antenna size but complex design, useful frequency rejection, discrepancy in simulated and measured results due to ground plane effect, incomplete band rejection. The research gap and what we are doing, that's what he's doing, is to obtain a simple design and complete band rejection. We want to design a UW with a single and dual band reject properties, maintain the antenna's good time domain characteristics using a novel technique to achieve all these. And he talks about the design and methodology. Results and why it's important. For basic antenna, like I don't want to read these things, but like this is how you talk about your research work you've done. Just break them into gaps and write little lines and just know how to explain it, because you don't have to talk about everything. You don't have all the time. So after explaining, then I asked the professor if she could spare time for me to showcase my work through PowerPoint so that she can get a clear picture of everything, which I think was really great. So with that, you also even have something you can start to build up. So the next questions are, what are your research questions? And you could have the research questions if you've taken time to read the professor's work and a few work that's in this field. So can her particular work be modified by using shortened pins in place of the L-probe feeding to achieve a wideband circular polarized microstrip patch antenna for ISM band applications? I would like to work on a wideband pattern and polarization because that's the area where your research interest and mine overlaps. However, I'm a self-motivated individual who is interested in taking on new challenges. So I'm also open to other areas too. So he went ahead like, hey, this is what I want to work. But if you have other areas that you think I will fit in best, I am your guy. And always, I also advise that an interview, they are just not only interviewing you, you're also interviewing them. So it's also important to have a few questions you could ask. So we prepared a few questions, which I'm going to let you know. Will there be an opportunity to work on any current project you're working on in case I'm accepted into your lab? What are the resources available in the lab? How many are your students expected to publish from their research before graduating? Do you have any favorite conferences that you love to attend and you want students to join you? Is there funding for masters if accepted into your lab, if Prof doesn't mention? Are there any trends in the kind of positions that research graduates from your lab have been getting in academia or in the industry? Life in the city of Huntsville, especially accommodation, and when should I expect a response from you, which is very important. So after the interview, like when can you have a response? And this is how we prepared for the interview. I know you've learned a lot. If you have specific questions, then let me know. And also, I know like most of us are really working hard. You could also prepare your questions with your answers and you could send to me. And if I have time, I could have a quick look and give you some tips and bits. If there are any questions you think are important that wasn't mentioned, let me know. And as always, I'm rooting for you. I'm wishing you all the best. Kindly give your comment, because once you do so, YouTube shows it to other people. I'm grateful for all of you, and I hope to hear success stories from you. And the good thing was Bob actually had a response immediately after his interview, and all the people that have used this approach have always had good results. Either they get selected or they get shortlisted. So put in the work and you will have smiles. And all the best till you hear from me again.